So welcome to another war game review from theplayers8.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at War of the Three Sanchos by Pocket Command. Is it Pocket Command Games?
No.
Pocket Campaigns. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Pocket Campaigns is the series. This is Surprised Stare Games.
That's the little tiny SSG underneath it. Surprised Stare Games.
And they have made an entire line of these type of small pocket battle.
Is it Surprised Stare that you walk up, or Surprised Stare of like, which one?
I mean, my guess, if you look at the logo, it's like a World War I soldier who has a 40-yard stare, right? So,
so this particular iteration of this series is designed by David Mortimer, and this is a 3-player. It's Pocket Campaigns, right? So it's a little 45-minute game.
Yeah, here's the board.
That is
just by.
Oh, it's double-sided.
Yeah, it is double-sided because if you play solo, you play on this side.
Okay.
So this is the 3-player.
I didn't know that
version.
But yeah, we played this. Mike came over. We played it 3-player, and it played in about 45 to 60 minutes. And it is a really small, tight little area control game. Basically, you're looking to accrue 12 victory points. Is it 10 or 12?
It's 10.
Is it 10? It was 10.
Yes.
You're to accrue 10 victory points, or have the most at the end of the game.
Yeah. Which I think, with repeated plays, I think it would be much more competitive. I think it would be harder for someone just to walk away with it.
Yes.
Is what I'm saying.
No, I agree. Yeah.
I think we were trying to learn, and we were kind of boxing with each other.
We were doing too much
around.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, there's like 6 spaces on the board, 7 spaces. Let's just move in and take them.
Yeah.
And we were. So I really think that more often than not, the games are going to be like 3 for one, 5 for another, and 6 for the winner or something.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would end by time rather than domination victory points.
Yeah.
I think more often than not, once you start knowing what you're doing.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But yeah, you basically have 3 different players, and they're represented by red, yellow, and green. And those are represented on the board and also on the cards. And you have a little hand of 2 cards. I'm pretty sure it was 2. And the active player will play 1 card, and they will do the green player will do this, then the red player will do this, and the yellow player will do this, depending on kind of what's left over and the order in which you're doing things. So that's a really neat kind of card-driven mechanic of the game, and that's, to me, this was the really cool part of it, is trying to figure out which of your cards to play to maximize what you're doing and to minimize what the other players will get to do, because that's a whole turn.
And that's the heart of the game, right? It's picking the right card out of your. What did you have, like 3 cards, if I remember correctly? 2. I think it was 2 or 3.
It was very
small. But it's like
man.
You've got to choose the one that gives you a good utility or benefit, but also try and particularly to deny you guys of what was going on. I thought these cards were very well done. They were interesting and unique. You can also,
because this is it. You take the ops, and then the other 2 players
get the event.
do whatever's written out. So you have flexibility, but maybe not as many ops.
And those ops are used for things like recruiting guys, movement, sieging, getting. The other cool thing was you had like a ready area, and I can't remember what it was specifically called.
It was like a pool or something.
But then you had your off-board kind of supply, and you had to buy into your ready area
and then
then recruit. So it was that, I thought, was a very interesting, to me that felt very logistics focused.
Yes, it is,
because it's like you were transporting goods and
you have
supplies.
to levy the guys.
Get them levied, get them up there, get them equipped and fed.
Which was different actions and different points, and so it's a supply system and it's an economy in a really simple way that works really well.
Yeah, it's kind of abstracted, but I thought it was very cool.
Yeah.
And this is the exact same period as Almoravid.
Yes.
Which is GMT Games' second Levy and Campaign series game. It is in Spain, that Granada, Spain area, and the war of these 3 kingdoms, basically Aragon, Najera, can't remember, and then Castilla. Najera, there you go, whatever.
They don't pronounce the J's, right?
Yeah, you're correct. You are correct. But I thought that was a cool way to deal with that historical topic in a different way than a game like Levy and Campaign, which is 10 times the size of the game.
And the complexity, yes.
So this was a simple game in a very small box, really great card system, and I loved the way the ops and the events worked. I just thought these cards were very well done.
Yeah, it was really well done. Those are really clean, little neat aspects of the game. The other kind of major part of the game, you're trying to move and control areas.
Yeah,
right?
it's not rocket science.
But is the combat system. So here's all kind of the playing pieces, and there's like as many dice as there are playing pieces.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of this bucket o' dice style game, but it has this really. I think it was unique. I don't know if I've played a system quite like it before.
Very unique, and in fact, we struggled with that. I think, more than with any other concept of the game.
Oh yeah, it's the most granular part of it.
Yeah.
And you really have to do it right. And it's when you
think it through.
When you have the rules condensed, you've got to make sure you read them.
Yeah.
It's all in there.
It is.
But like we had to read it a couple of times to be like, am I doing this right? Because it's a little bit the way that you interpret dice and you trigger them going down this line of numbers.
Yeah.
How to evaluate that. And then with re-rolls, what to re-roll and what to value, what's good and what's not, is really important. Mm-hmm. And so make sure you take your little time. This is a small game, but the combat system is the thing that you want to pay attention to, because if you can do it badly.
Well, and if you do it badly, it defeats really the mechanic there. I actually thought this was also a very good part of the game because it was different and interesting. The best part I thought was your Sancho dice,
yes.
which it's literally twice the size of the other 6-siders. As opposed to a normal traditional 6-sider, this one goes up to 9. So there's a 9 face, and there's a 5, a 3, a 7, and then there's also a 0. So this is a high risk, high reward die that you only roll. What'd you roll?
I rolled a 9.
Not nice. But you roll this only when your Sancho is involved in that combat. If he's not in that region, you don't get to roll. And that makes a huge difference, because that die, more often than not, is going to be alone on the column of dice results that is going to allow you to at least inflict at least one wound.
And will go... It is more likely to go first.
Yes.
And the order in which you activate the dice down the line numerically descending is really, really important, and it will cascade the combat results. The combat system was really interesting. Basically, you're going to roll dice, and then you kind of line them all up according to their numerical value, and then starting from the highest number, if that number is like alone, so only one of us rolled a 9, for example, that dice can knock out any other one dice. And
inflict a loss.
Yes, which inflicts a loss.
When you take a die out, it inflicts an automatic loss.
Yeah, like literally
one of
a
these
guy
discs.
from the stack of discs.
Yep.
And then what happens is, so that's done. Then you go to the next lowest. And so what you can do, why this is important is because if you roll 2 of the same number, those cancel out.
Yeah,
and you just get rid of them, they don't do anything. So you can use your winning die to create the next winning die, which you can use to create the next winning die.
Yeah.
Depending, sometimes you roll a whole bunch of 3s, and it's like, you can't do enough hits to like make that work.
Yeah.
And
unless you have one of the reroll, which you get from card play. It was called a reserve, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
So it's like you had that in reserve, and you could use that resource to then re-roll a certain amount of dice.
And it's a little bit unintuitive in a way, because you're like, I would like to take my 5, because I've got 3 of them, and roll it into, and I might roll it into a 1. But, that might be something that makes a difference, or that might be like, well, that's just going to get knocked off, and then my 5s are going to be wasted, so I really need to get it to that 6, because the 6 is going to trigger.
Yeah.
And the way you manipulate them takes a little bit of thought in a game that otherwise is very straightforward.
Yep.
The combat's quite thinky.
I would think it's counterintuitive to what you normally would do with a war game, right?
Yeah,
Typically, you're going to roll, and it's going to be 4, 5s, and 6s hits, or highest die hits. And I would say this, it was kind of funny, because I remember when we were playing it, we were like reading, okay, what does that mean again? Because it is translated, from, I believe, Spanish into English. So the translation's good, but I've always found sometimes translation leaves out the unwritten or the nuance of a rule.
Or you just lack that extreme precision that we might be used to.
With a specific word.
Yeah.
But I remember we went to the example of play in the book, and that really, to me, clarified it.
It was
I'm
very,
like, oh,
yeah, it was very
okay,
helpful.
I get it now. We went back, and by the time the game was over in 45 minutes, I think it was second nature. We were like, boom, 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 you lose 3, I lose 9, blah, blah, blah. You know, that kind of thing. But very cool little combat system. I thought it was very unique and cool.
Yeah. What I'll do is, because having talked about that, I'll show you how that works, so that you can kind of see and visualize what that looks like. Because it's a neat little flow that you go through, and then seeing the results. And it's possible to wipe someone, but it's quite unlikely. Just with the volume of dice that you'll both be rolling.
I found more often than not, it was, I lost 1 and you lost 2. I mean,
it's usually that kind of thing. I mean, it's possible if you have a mega roll and they have a terrible roll, you'll just kill them. But that's
not going to happen all the time.
That is unlikely.
And then with reserves, it's even less likely, because if you do have a colossally bad roll, you can re-roll some dice. And
it's almost invariably you'll roll into something better.
Yeah.
But yes, I'll show you how this works, and what we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the board. Not a big board, indeed. It's actually very tiny. The goal of the game is to either, I think, get to 10 points. It might be 12. I think it's 10. I think it's 10 in 2 play, maybe 12 in 3. Or have the most at the end of the game. And basically what's going to happen is, it's 10 turns. That's what it is. You have 10 turns. And if you can get 12 points, you win. So what's going to happen is you are going to play a card, effectively. Like, you have this little hand of 2 cards. You're going to play one of them, and the card that you play, you are going to get the ops on it to do whatever it is that you want to do. And then, so let's say I'm the green player. I get the 1 up on it. I ignore all the text. I just get the number, and 1 is not a very good number. Then the red player gets to reserve this card at the end of the round. Let's get this in focus. I feel like that's not... Are we seeing this? Okay. And then the yellow player gets to use 1 point on one of the following, either to move or to attack or to besiege. This last bit is ignored. This is for the solo stuff. And the solo board is on the back, and there's some other different notation, mostly on the turn track. So I could either play this card, where I'm going to get 1 up, but it also kind of this is very limited of what the other players can do. Or I could play this one, I'm going to get 2 ups, I'm going to do a little bit more, but conversely, then the yellow player is going to fortify 2, and if not, then they're going to use 2 points to besiege the most favorable area. I'm the green player, so we ignore this. Then the red player is going to use 2 points to move and attack. So you can see I get to do a bit more, but so do my opponents, right? This is the choices that I have. And I'm going to do one of those things, and I'm going to refill my hand. But that's what, like, the tightness of the game is. Because then if I'm the yellow player over here, I have all these big 3s. Cool, I can do a whole lot. The yellow player... So then the red player is going to move 3 from your strongest army to opponent's weakest army in an adjacent region. And if that's not possible, just to an empty region. So you're giving someone like a free move with their strongest army, right? That's powerful. And then the green player is going to get 3 points to move and attack, but not in their homeland, basically. So the big numbers are good. Or the other thing that I can do, instead of kind of executing all of this, and you don't have a choice, right? You do the stuff, then they do the stuff, then they do the stuff. I can choose to reserve it. And I simply will put this into my reserve, where I kind of put it face down, kind of tuck it under here, or just keep it separate. And this is my reserve card. And the reserve cards are important because when you get into a combat, you can play reserves to affect the dice. But the reality is moving, right? It's exactly what you think. We're going to move guys. And, you know, it's how many guys can you move with move actions, how many spaces, all the usual stuff that you might expect. The interesting part of the game is when you get into combat. Sieging areas, so if I want to go into here, I have to lay siege to it. I do a siege action, and basically I'm going to spend points to commit guys to the siege, and they go in if you have more than the opponent, but it's very expensive to do that, points-wise, and it takes a really long time. You're going to get counterattacked. Let's do a little attack here, though. So let's say these guys move in and we do an attack. This is kind of the crux of the game, is the combat stuff. This is, I think, what they were trying to show off. Gleaning it from the rules wasn't the easiest, just because the translation was a little bit weird, but here we go. So, I have 3 regular yellow dice, and the 1 big king dice. This is my king piece. It's not the actual king, it's like the king's guard and his elite units. Then the red have 3 red, and they have the red king piece. So they're going to have 3 red and the red king die. So, the regular dice, D6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, everything that you might expect from those good old-fashioned dice. The king die, however, spicy. It has a 0, it has a 7, a 5, a 9, a 1, and a 3. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and a 0. So like, this can go real hot or real cold, and that's part of kind of the joy of it. So what we'll do is, I think we roll them all and then we commit reserves. So we're going to roll these and see what we get after I've knocked everything all around. All right. Wow, this was very interesting. And what they say to do, and the easiest way to do it, is to line them up with the numbers on the board. Wow, this is hilarious. This is a kind of a crazy roll. Okay, so this is really interesting. So I'm going to resolve this as if there were no, and the balance happening in this space here, right? We're going to resolve this as if no one had any battle cards or any reserves. So what happens is we go in descending order and we resolve the numbers. So we're going to start with a 4 because that's the highest number. If this die is on its own, and I'm the only player who has one there, I inflict a hit on the opponent. So what does that look like? It means I remove 1 die from here, and I also remove 1 piece from the army. If there's a bunch together, and it's like any amount, if there's 2 different colors in a line, those will all cancel out. You don't have any remainders, it's not cancelled at 1-to-1, the whole line is cancelled. So, what I'm looking to do here is to be smart about this is, I'm going to do the 4, so I'm going to ping a guy from here, so he's dead, and I'm going to remove this 2 die. So now, I'm also going to do a hit here. So that was the first thing that happens. Then these guys all cancel out, so nothing happens in that row. Then I've got 2, so I'm going to do another hit to red. So I'm going to ping another one of these. Oh. I'm going to ping their king piece and get rid of this die. That's the only thing I can do. The king piece goes... Oh, that's where this guy came from. He was in here. He always warps back to your castle, your home castle with a little symbol. You don't lose him. And that's what happened. So I inflicted 2 hits, one of which was the king piece, basically. Think about it that way. I think I... Oh, and that's because... So I now have only 1 here and a 1, but they don't have any other dice to knock out. They have pieces to knock out, but if you can't remove a die, you can't knock out a piece. That was the other key difference there with how that works. So, yeah, I had 3 more hits, but it's that number minus 1 if you think about it that way. So, in end effect, I did 2 hits to them, one of which was the king piece, and that's what that looks like. Very different outlook now. So, what we'll do is we'll set that same combat up, but we will play some reserves. And what reserves do is they allow you to re-roll things, which I think is really fun, and it's one of the interesting parts of the game, because you don't know what your opponent has reserved. So I'm going to we'll do blind ones here. Oopsies, we knocked them all over. Okay. So very different roll. Oh, yeah, So we've got 1, 3, 3, 2 4s, 6, a 2, and another 1. So this is where you might consider, you're like, okay, let's play a reserve. And playing reserves, you play them after you've rolled, and the attacker plays first, is typically the case in a lot of games. And so what you're going to do, so I'm going to, let's say this is the attacker. The yellows are attacking. And I have a reserve 3. I can re-roll 3 of my dice. And what I'm trying to do is to roll myself out of these pairs, preferably higher. So the likelihood of me doing that, the 2 little small ones, probably not going to happen. But we'll re-roll them all anyway, because currently these are all misses, right? These are all misses, they all cancel out with each other. But we're really hoping for one of these to be a 5, and then one of these, the king die, to get me a 7 or a 9 or a 5, something like that. That'd be really great. So we're just going to re-roll these. Big roll. Funny. I rolled a 5, which is good. Unfortunately, I rolled 2 of them, and I rolled a 6. That's a bit of a waste. So this is going to be really interesting, right? Then the defender can also play. They're like, cool. In this instance, the defender would not. They might try to re-roll 1. No, it doesn't make a difference. Unless they can roll a 6, no, it doesn't make a difference. Then this is where the maths comes into it. So they wouldn't bother, because if they re-roll, they could roll this into a high number. I forgot about that. Yeah, they'll do it. They'll play a 1. If at 1, they're going to re-roll their king die just to try to hose the opponent. So we're going to re-roll this into a 0. So it's the same. It's worse, but it's the same effect in the game. So what's going to happen now is we're just going to go down that line. So the 6s, they're going to knock out a 4, and we do that by killing the guy. The 5s are going to knock out a 3, and we do that by killing another guy. And then I've got a 2 and a 0. These are unmatched, so they would do hits, except there's no yellow dice. So the low numbers are bad, even if they're on their own. If they're the last ones, nothing to be done about it. And I could have re-rolled one of these into something to maybe match one of those, but it was less likely, and so do I keep my reserve or not? Or they would have just knocked that die out with the first one, and I would have taken a loss, and then they would have knocked out another one with the second hit. Like, it's the little math part of it's kind of interesting, but you can't rush it. I like to actually do it and lay it out, because I felt like when we were just saying, oh, you do this many hits, skipping the maths as it's laid out in the book was a bit of a struggle, because this is not typically how losses are calculated. But this is the interesting part of the game, I think. Other than that, it's an area control game, right? Controlling the values of regions. Don't let your capital get taken, because they're all 3. That's how you lose a game. But it's a game of trying to do what you want to do, but also maybe screw your opponents with not letting them do stuff, or play ones where they're kind of useless to them. Keeping decent cards in reserve. That's one of the interesting parts about these, is you can only have 1 card in reserve, I think. I don't think you can have 2. And so what you might do is you're like, cool, I'm going to play a really crappy card. Where was the one that we had? We just had it. I showed it earlier. There you go. If I'm the green player, I get one little thing and the yellow player's going to do something. The red card has to reserve this card, and this occupies their reserve space, and it sucks. Like, 1 re-roll is not good. You want a good reserve card, but if people are reserving cards for you out of their hand, you don't have a choice about it, and it kind of bites. It's really not fun. But that's how the game works. You're trying to move, get into areas, knock out armies, put your ones into the cities to claim the points. You go up on the victory point track, real simple. Tight little game, doesn't last all that long. The combat's kind of, I think it's pretty unique considering how small of a game it is and the way that the dice work. And you're trying to get points at the end of the game, or if you can dominate and get 12 points, good for you. Although I think with experienced players, that's quite difficult to do. So that's how the game works, and what we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the board. I had a really enjoyable time playing this, as it's one of those kind of very small.
Yeah, it's definitely travel-sized.
Yes, that without question. It is a pocket campaign, but it has just that extra little bit more meat on it than some of the like super mega simple kind of travel games or very small filler war games, which I really like. You know, if you're going to play something, you can play this on like a lunch break at work with some colleagues or just stick it into something. This one isn't just airy-fairy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, there's much more to this.
There's a little meat on
with
this
the
one.
system, that you can really get engaged with, that's I think really helps it to kind of stand above some of those other very, very light war games.
Well, and it goes to the next level a little bit in combat with the dice, but you also have sieging. Sieging is a very important part of the game. There are a lot of castles or fortresses shown on the map. And in order to take those areas, particularly the more valuable ones, you're going to have to siege. Siege is pretty darn hard.
Yes, it's expensive.
Because it's expensive, you need more guys than they've got, and it's just like very attritional, which actually felt very correct.
Yeah.
Because sieges are 2-3 months and you finally break someone. But I liked that it had the siege, it had the open field battles, loved the inclusion of the leaders. If your leader got killed, it wasn't the end of the game. You just put him back in your home territory,
walked back home.
which could be bad or could be good, depending. But the other thing I remember as we were playing, it's important to continue to build that reserve pool of ones that you can actually recruit. I think too often one of us would be like, oh, I didn't get enough guys up here, so now it's going to take me 2 turns to get more men, and then it's kind of too late. So it's one of those games where you got to be balanced. You got to kind of approach it in an even manner, and then when it's time, it's like throw all the chips in the middle of the table and do it.
I think the other thing, the decision point that I really liked was saving the card for the rerolls.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Because
the reserve, I think, is
you
what that was
wanted to. It's kind of like I'm going to waste my whole turn putting down a 3 because that's going to give me a lot of rerolls.
Yep.
But you could also then, or I could play a card knowing that it says red player reserves this card and it's a 1.
Yeah.
And you're like, so I'm like,
not bad.
I'm giving you a trash reserve that you don't have as much flexibility with.
Yeah.
And then here's me like, haha, I've got this really good one.
Yeah.
And those can make a huge difference in combat and can really change the face of a battle, which I think is really fun. But you can mess up someone else's reserve as well.
You not only, you gave them a crap reserve card, but they didn't get any benefit from the event.
Invariably, yeah.
And that was, I thought, a very good part of the game as well. So this is number 4 in the pocket campaigns. The other 3, 2 of those 3 I own, because when I did this on GameFound, they were like $15 add-ons.
Just kind of add-on.
This one was like 25, those were 15, so I just added those other 2. One's the Ming Voyages. I think it's mostly solitaire. I think that's about the only way it can be played. The other one is basically the War of the Roses. I think it's called Cousins War. And it's more of the 2-player game, you know, Lancaster versus York and... But I thought it was cool. I remember when it came out, I thought, this looks unique and interesting. It's a small box, pretty meaty game, looks good. I think the components are really well done, and it was very affordable. And I enjoyed it very much. There are very few good 3-player war games.
Do the other ones in the series have a similar kind of art style and component?
Yep.
Okay,
they look the same style of box.
I like that consistency.
Yep. Now, they don't all have dice or all the same style of dice. Different mechanics. The Ming one is specifically way more a Euro than this. And then that was an LCID expansion that I think because I backed it early, I got it. We did not use that, but it just gives you an ability.
Yeah, you like LCID's kicking around in the neutral area and like you can claim him and then use him for a reroll.
I felt like it was more a catch-up mechanic as I was reading that card than... So it's like, oh, I'm behind. I need to get El Cid to to kind of help me.
And he counts as a reserve card, so he's going to
Yep.
give you some re-rolls, but with some plus and minuses.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had an enjoyable time playing this little neat thing.
I thought Mike enjoyed it too, and I think in general he does not like this style of game.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that we play this style of game all that often.
No, but this is one of those games that like you can squeeze it into somewhere.
Yep.
You can take this on a vacation with you. You can play it on a lunch break at work.
Yeah.
It's very versatile in that way, and it sits more than 2 people, which is a draw, I think, for a lot of groups.
Well, on that very night we played 3 games, which in 4.5, 5 hours to play 3 games, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
So
War of the Three Sanchos from Surprise Stare Games. Check this out if you're interested in. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm Alexander of theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.